Hello, Kathleen. Do you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you hear me?
I can. I think I was on mute.
Oh, okay. That's okay. It's not letting me start my video though.
Oh,
It says the host has stopped it.
oh,
As
wow.
always.
How on earth? Okay.
I wonder if could you maybe pull up participants and just grant
Yeah.
like a certain
Oh,
person
there you go.
permission?
You
Does
got
that
it.
work?
Yep.
Okay, let's try.
See if it works now.
No, it still says no.
Um, well, I took off. I'm sorry. Hold on a second.
It's okay.
Oh yeah. Hold on. It is saying. Um, hmm. I'm gonna try this, but it's still saying I can't give you video.
Yeah, it
Oh,
worked.
okay.
Yay!
Well,
Hi.
hi. I think we have about 8 people. We'll wait. Oh, it's right at 11. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's nice. So nice to
Yeah.
see you.
Oh, likewise. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy we found a time that worked because I know typically you do evenings and that was complicated.
That's okay. That's okay. A Sunday, I'm on the East Coast, and so it's
Yeah.
been here, and it's weekends are fine and days are fine too.
Okay.
So thank you. We'll give it just a couple seconds,
Sure.
but I am recording this for anyone who um, cannot make it. But let me just check one thing now that here we go. Okay. All right. I have chat open. Everything's working. We're in good stuff. Thank you. All right. Let's start because this is such a big topic.
I know there's so much we could talk about.
There's so
So,
much to talk about,
yeah.
but thank you. And I want to thank all our guests who are here, all of the women who are joining us today. This morning, at least on my time. So if we have women who are not familiar with Friends of the Forest, I'm Kathleen, and I am the founder of this little organization. And our goal, our mission is really to provide wellness programs that are nature-based for women. And we do this through all sorts of ways, online, in person. And last year we started this important project called the Rebloom, which is for women who have completed active treatment, and just kind of we take our programs and we kind of structure them a little more tailored for some of the challenges that women feel.
Mm.
We've started to do last year was break things up by age groups, because what we found and what we heard was a woman in her 30s, her cancer journey and her worries and what she's thinking about is much different than someone in their 60s, 50s, 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some of that happening, and then we have some general programs. And so today I was thinking about how can we talk about, coming back to nature and having nature sort of, envelop us without talking about nutrition. And there's so much information out there. There's so much information that's not real. There's so much it's overwhelming, just in general, let alone
Mm-hmm.
having to live with being a cancer survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So I am so excited because in my other life, I work for a cancer organization, and that is how I came to meet Dionne. And we've had some webinars and we've had some podcasts with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, oh, this is the person that we need to have here. And so thank you, because you are in France, and I really appreciate this. So I want to introduce you as our
Okay.
wonderful guest, as our functional, and we'll get into what all this means, but you are a functional and integrative dietitian, and you specialize in cancer recovery. So I think that's so important. Before I have like a legality I have to I have to read as I welcome everyone, in that today is about general education. It's not about, we're not offering medical advice. We encourage you that if you have questions about your personal health care, that you really need to talk to your cancer team, your healthcare team, on anything that's medical related. So I want to make sure that people understand that we are not offering medical advice today. So I want to introduce you, Dionne, and if you would like to just talk about, your personal connection to cancer and your organization, which is Ground and Root, and how this has all kind of come to be, and then we can dive into so many questions about integrative nutrition and cancer recovery.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kathleen. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So when I decided to become a dietitian, I had first already studied holistic nutrition. I had studied herbal medicine. I started studying yoga when I was 20. Like I was already kind of in the holistic world. Like that felt more familiar and comfortable for me. But at the time, I was like, well, maybe I need to get, like a legit degree so that I can actually do this in the world. So I went and became a dietitian. And I did not know at the time that I was going to specialize in cancer. I didn't know what I was going to specialize in, but I think I had the nice, we'll say the fortunate opportunity during my internship to spend a month at MD Anderson Cancer Center, which, not knowing that I would be in this world was really perfect. Like I couldn't have asked for a better experience. And on top of that, I got to spend time in their integrative medicine department at MD Anderson. So it was like really beautiful, just, introduction into this world. And I was working as a just regular dietitian at the hospital. My father was diagnosed with cancer. He was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I really had a chance to like pull on my experience, right, during my internship and like everything I knew about holistic nutrition and herbal medicine and just like really support him outside of the hospital setting, right? Because I was his daughter. I could just say like, here's what I want you to do. And thankfully, we got his team on board. Everybody was okay with it. He did really, really wonderful. Like, I felt so validated. Like, oh my God, he did great. He kept working. He had good energy, all the things, everything I could have hoped for. But then 5 years later, his cancer came back. And that's when my world really shifted because I was already really into integrative nutrition. I understood the benefits of all of this. I saw firsthand how helpful nutrition could be in a cancer journey, like getting you to the other side of treatment, feeling pretty good, like good outcomes. But then when my dad's cancer came back, I felt like we were just left with so many unanswered questions, right? Like first being why? Why did this come back? He was like eating well, he was still doing the supplements. What happened? And of course, many of you maybe can relate to this, but his team really didn't have any answers for him. They're just like, well, I mean, it's bad luck. It just happens sometimes. And I was so just not okay with that response. I'm like, I'm sorry. Cancer is not luck. Like, this is not bad luck. This is something that was going on. And that really began my journey down the world of functional alternative medicine because through him, we really tried to find other providers that could help him and can provide some of those answers. And I didn't know much about functional medicine at that time. So it really opened my eyes to like, wow, we were able to use different testing and different strategies to get behind the scenes of what was actually going on in my dad's body. And then it became really kind of obvious why the cancer came back. He had a lot of burden going on. He had, just to give you a few things, he had active parasites happening. He had a chronic infection with Epstein-Barr. He had glyphosate in his blood. He had a bone infection that wasn't healing. He had rising blood sugar and insulin levels. I mean, all these things that we were just like, but he was healthy. It was like, oh my God, like those were all red flags that we just didn't know to look for. So at the end of all of it, unfortunately, my dad did not survive his recurrence, but it left me with this really strong sense of purpose that I had to get this information out to people. Like this was just not common knowledge, at least when I learned about it all, 7 years ago, it was not common knowledge. And I just felt like I had an obligation. Like now this was it. So for the last 7 years, like this is all I've been doing. Like this has been my specialty, and I've really been devoted to making sure everybody has this information.
Love that. Thank you. So I guess let's just start with a definition of like, what is integrative and functional
Yeah.
nutrition, and why is that helpful to cancer patients versus maybe just um, a dietitian? Because they
Yeah.
all, we all have them in our hospital, we all have them in our care
Yeah.
teams for cancer. But
Mhm.
what is that? Explain that
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's a really perfect place to start because I think it can be a little confusing. I also sort of consider myself as a holistic cancer dietitian just because I think that encompasses everything. It's like when we think of holistic, we think of like all the options, right? So integrative, well, first off, a traditional dietitian, as I also was trained as, you're being taught how to use nutrition as like medical therapy. And there's very specific protocols that you follow, so like if this, then that, if this, then that. And so like that's kind of where the standard traditional dietitian is coming from. And in many things that can be really helpful. Like that can sort of be enough. What integrative nutrition does, or integrative medicine, is it's really looking at what are all the other strategies that can support your healing, and can we think outside the box? So things like mind body medicine, right? Which your organization is obviously a big piece of. Things like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or herbal medicine or like other philosophies, right? So it kind of broadens the toolbox of what else can we bring in to support your healing, to support your recovering. And this is like my training started in that. So that felt very comfortable to me. That was sort of my world. Where functional medicine took me is learning how to find root causes of things. So that's where you really dive deeper into why is this disease here? What are the suspected risks or root causes? Instead of just treating the cancer cells, we're actually trying to get underneath to figure out like why? Why is the body creating cancer cells? What can we do differently? Again, within our control, what can we do that will help the body hopefully stop making those cancer cells? So that's where functional goes like deeper. It's really looking at the why.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's start with um patient survivors, because you're a survivor from when you're diagnosed. So
Yeah.
survivors who are in active treatment.
Mhm.
And maybe like what are, I don't want to say dietary changes, but maybe like habits, like how can, if you're in active treatment, what can you be doing to help your body as you're going through? And we have some treatment has come so far, right? And
Mhm.
yes, there's still chemotherapy, but now we have immunotherapy and targeted therapy, and we have, three line therapy, and the side effects are
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
So what are some, like, what are you seeing? What advice, or what would you do if someone, comes to you in active treatment and they're looking
Mhm.
for, what are some things I can be doing that's not overwhelming? Like starting
Yeah.
super simple stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you said that. Just because it's like two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
One side's like, thankfully, there's actually like hundreds of things we could do to
Yeah.
help you feel better, to help you heal, right? Like to help
Yeah.
you recover. And those hundreds of things feel completely overwhelming. Like, where do I start? How could I possibly do all these things, right? So I like that you started with. I think that's perfect because it's two sides of the coin. So I think that and I will tell you just to be upfront, like I don't necessarily recommend everybody start at the same place. Like I don't kind of have everybody should start with this. And then, because I also think that we're all coming at it from a different place. Some of us maybe already have a really solid diet in place, like that we've been doing for years.
Yeah.
But maybe our stress and our emotional wellness is just, a wreck versus the opposite. So I think that sometimes you start with what is going to be most helpful for you. But I will tell you, like, the foundational things, right? So if we needed to pick from foundation, when it comes to food, what's going to be most helpful in you healing is making sure that you get enough protein. That is really number one, because when you're in active treatment, your protein needs are higher. You need the amino acids to heal, to like tissue repair, cellular repair, right? To heal, to detox. You need them to make immune cells, to make red blood cells, all the things that can then become deficient, right? When you're moving through treatment. You need protein for energy, to maintain your muscle mass. So it's like if we really had to just, you know what I mean, shrink it down to where's the most important place to start, it
Yep.
would be that. And sometimes that's the hardest place to start because none of those foods sound good anymore, and then it's tricky.
Yeah, and that's a good point well, 2 points is one, if you're a vegetarian, what do you like? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
what do I do? Two,
Mm-hmm.
the I have no appetite, to your point
Mm-hmm.
of, oh God, I don't want chicken. That just sounds like the worst thing ever, or fish, or whatever your
Yeah.
go-to protein is.
Yeah.
If you're just can't stomach that I can possibly have any of those foods,
Mm-hmm.
what what are alternatives? What do you do in that
Mm-hmm.
case if you just
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want that. I can't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think that's true for many. That's not unusual, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a common struggle. So actually, I just had a client on Friday where we had to like talk through this exact thing. We're like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Because nothing sounds good. So sometimes it's just really granular. Like what I'll just give you an example of what I did with her. It's really thinking about, let's just list out all the possible proteins, knowing that at any given moment, something may sound good and something may not,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes it's just about making a list of the foods that you could eat, putting the list on the fridge,
Mhm.
and being like, oh, it's time to eat. I have to pick something from that list.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of, or people are helping you. Hopefully, you're not doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
You're stocking your fridge, you're stocking your pantry with some of these options, or the freezer, so that you have different choices. Because I think that is the thing, is like if you can't really plan ahead because you just don't know what's going to sound good tomorrow or even tonight,
Yep.
right? Like it could
Yeah.
change. So sometimes it's just having some practical tips like that. Like you make a list. I know I have to pick something from this list. What sounds the least offensive? That's what I'm going to go for, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I love the list part because I use that a lot in journaling of like, I think
Mm,
sometimes that to sit down and write is like, oh, I'm not a writer, I can't journal. But it's like, we'll just make a list of like 6 words every day of how you feel.
I
Just
like that.
right, go out into
Yeah.
nature and like 6 words that come to mind as you're sitting out there without thinking about you have to have these really profound thoughts because it's
Yeah. Or a
pressure.
poem. You have to write a poem
I have to
today.
write a poem today
Right.
with so much pressure.
Yeah.
And so I
100%.
think like having lists of just, here are things to pick and choose from on different
Yeah.
comments,
Yeah.
is such a great idea. So
Well,
how
and I'll say one more thing to that too, because I think there's also the backup that yes, of course, we want to choose like real whole food as much as we can. But the truth is sometimes a protein powder is going to help you like hit your target, right? So then maybe you also just have some backups on hand. You have some plain protein powder, you have some bone broth, or you have even a protein drink, right? And thankfully, now we can find a lot of good ones, a lot of organic and whole food based options that aren't full of chemicals and sugars and things. So that there's just always a choice.
yeah.
I've had clients where sometimes they're just like mixing protein powder into applesauce because that's like the only thing that sounds good, right? So we can be creative.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sugar for a little bit and all
Yeah.
quick fixes because we also live in a world where everything can be quick and there's DoorDash and like, oh, I'll
Mm,
just order. But sugar's a big one, right? And sugar
mm,
is tough because a lot of us were raised on, have
hmm.
a cookie, like that's your
Me too.
dessert. That
Hmm.
was my lunchbox dessert forever was
Yeah.
made brownie, and I kind of love them. So
Hmm.
when you're also in treatment or coming out of treatment, that being aware of what you're putting in your body is so important. So can you talk a little bit about
Hmm.
particularly sugar, and if you have
Yeah.
sugar craving, like what options can you have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is sort of the, how would I say, like, out of all the nutrition and cancer recovery things, this is sometimes the one that's the hardest to stomach,
Mhm.
that like sugar really isn't going to help you heal. Like, it is not your friend when you're actively trying to help your body recover. That said, it's not all or nothing, right? And I think there's also different kinds of sugars out there. So when I say sugar's not your friend, I'm really referring to like concentrated, refined sugars, right? I'm not talking about fruit. I'm not talking necessarily about something that tastes sweet. Even like a sweet potato is kind of a sweet flavor. I'm talking about like actual, sugar, sweet treats, sugary drinks, things like this. Unfortunately, yeah, it does a lot to sabotage your healing. It suppresses your immune system. Do you know that a single can of Coke can drop your immune system by 50% for like up to 4 hours? It's crazy. So when you're already worried about low blood counts, and then we're going to have sugary drinks on top of that, like, your immune system is not going to be helping you. So we have to do what we can to limit that. There's a lot of good natural alternatives. It doesn't mean you can't have anything with like a natural sweetener in it. You could have fruit, like fruit smoothies could be a nice alternative when you're craving something sweet. You could still put some protein and fat and some other things in there, right? To like not have it spike your sugar, your blood sugar, I mean. You can also do even dried fruit could be like, having like a date versus a cookie. You're going to still get some of that sweetness, but with some nutrients too,
Yeah.
right? Some
Yeah.
nutritional benefit. So there's always ways around that. And because I know I could spend like an hour just talking about this topic, but the one thing I want you to understand too, because I think it can be a really confusing topic, is that when we're talking about sugar, you know, getting in the way of your healing or even fueling cancer growth. What we're not talking about is like you eat it and it goes direct to the cancer cells, right? Which I think can be really confusing and scary. So like, let's say it's a holiday or you're at a birthday party and you actually really want that piece of cake. And then you're so terrified that you're feeding the cancer cells that, that's creating stress, etc. So it's not exactly like that. It's more about what's happening with your blood sugar balance. So if you're kind of constantly eating sugar and high glycemic foods, lots of carbs, your blood sugar is going to be higher, right? Or it's going to go up and down. It's going to be doing this, and your insulin is going to follow that same trajectory. And when that happens, that's creating an environment in your blood that is more favorable to cancer cells. So it's more about the blood sugar and the insulin balance than it is about like the sugar in that piece of cake, if that makes sense. So that means like it's like the 80-20 rule. It means 20% of the time, yeah, you can still have a treat. It's not like you can't ever have a cookie. Like it's just gonna, negate all the work that you've done.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's what are you doing kind of more often? Hopefully
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So where would someone start if, because there's a couple of things that always worry me. One is there's so much information out there that you're not really sure. We see all these now like AI written cookbooks on and
Mm,
herbalism, and they're on, Amazon, and it's like that's not a real person. Like, so where do you start if
mm,
you're thinking, okay, I'm a cancer survivor, what do I like, where do I start? How do I either, put a plan together, like, because it's so overwhelming and everyone's telling you
yeah,
something different, and there's a
yeah.
million things that you should and shouldn't be doing, and I think it's very overwhelming. So how do you put
Yeah.
together a nutrition plan? Like, what are some simple things that you could maybe
Hmm.
start with if you're
Hmm.
in treatment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, you can follow me.
Right.
I'm
We
happy
know
to
that.
advise you,
Yes.
even just through my blogs and my emails,
Yes.
right? So that would be step one. And I have a cookbook too that you can
Yes,
use
you
if
do.
you'd like.
Yes, you
Yeah.
do. Yes, you do.
And no, I hear what you're saying though, because it is also, I think, very extreme and very polarizing, because where I really consider myself, again, a holistic dietitian, like I'm trying to pull the best from all possible options. I'm very much like, let's try to do a balanced approach. I think when I was working in the hospital, sometimes that's too extreme in the like, everything's fine, don't worry about it, just keep your weight on, which we know is like not going to help you heal. Versus, like social media scrolling is going to be like,
Yeah.
chemo's going to kill you. You need to be raw vegan, juicing. Like it's the
Yeah.
opposite extreme, right? So I think anything that feels too extreme should just automatically be like, that's probably not correct. It's too extreme. Like we're
Okay.
really more about middle of the road. And I've had this conversation with several of my clients too, who have a lot of fear around eating the wrong thing. Is that let's go back to like what actually grows in nature. Because the truth is, if it was like if we get it from the earth, that is not what caused your cancer, right? Real food is not what caused your cancer. Now, all the like stuff we do to food, that's different. That's like food substances that humans have played with. We can't vouch for those. But if we just go back to the basics, like what grows in the garden, what even if you're eating animal food, because I'm an omnivore, so but it's like the egg from a chicken. Like it's the real whole food. I think you can't go wrong if
Yeah.
you default to that.
Okay. That's helpful. So if you're post treatment, I'm going to skip over to the other
Mm-hmm.
side. What would be potentially some key nutrients or food um, that would help you with strength and
Mm-hmm.
resilience when you've completed treatment and now
Yeah.
you're out and you've run the bell?
Yeah.
Um, what would that potentially look like what should they
Mm-hmm.
maybe what could you focus on for post treatment?
Mm-hmm. So there's three primary things that I do that I recommend after once treatment is done. And honestly, probably for the first well, it depends on how long treatment was, but let's say for the first 2 to 3 months post treatment, I kind of think of it as the fourth trimester. It's the time when your body, if you've been pregnant before, you know what I'm talking about. It's like
Yes.
the time when you're recovering, you're healing. And that's what's happening after treatment. Like it takes some time, right, for your body to clean house, to repair. So what we can do with these three things is we can help the body recover and repair quicker so that you get back to a baseline quicker and that we resolve those side effects. So one is helping with tissue and cellular repair, right? What are the nutrients your body needs for that? Again, protein is going to continue to be a really important one because the amino acids are what rebuild, right? They're the building blocks. So we have to keep our protein up in those first few months. And then there's also certain nutrients like omega-3s, foods rich in vitamin C, foods rich in zinc, even foods rich in vitamin A that are going to help the body repair quicker. So if there's like a plethora of nutrients on board, right, then the body has what it needs and it can repair faster. So that's one part. The second part is we have to help your body detox. We have to help your body clear out, right? Like not just the medication or whatever treatment you had, but then everything that all the dead cells and tissue debris and your body's like cleaning house. And so the more we support detox, the quicker that process goes and the less the brain fog doesn't linger as long, right? Like you get your energy back quicker. So we can support detox through foods, like foods that help us detox, that support the liver, but it can also be through lifestyle practices too, like maybe doing some sweating, right? Like doing some detox baths or getting into a sauna, doing some detox beverages, even just drinking some milk thistle tea or dandelion tea or more green tea. Like those can help us flush out. And then the third thing is the microbiome needs to recover because, right, I mean, most treatments, I don't know if there's any treatment that's not impacting the microbiome to some degree. So most people are left with like a gut that just doesn't feel good. So we kind of have to help the microbiome repair too. And that's bringing in, right, fermented foods or probiotics. It's bringing in things that help support the lining of the gut repair and heal, different herbs that can help with that, different nutrients. So I'm really trying to think about it in three pieces. And then we just start with, whatever feels the most doable for you. I think that's, again, that's going to vary for each person. It's also going to depend on what you were able to do during treatment that we just sort of continue and then maybe add on to versus starting from scratch, right?
Yeah, 100%. So we have a question from Lisa about dairy. What
Yeah.
about dairy?
Yeah. Let me see what was there. Oh, just that's it. What about
What
dairy?
about dairy? It's a
Just
big
leaving
one.
it really broad. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
dairy? Okay. Dairy is a good one because it's not black and white. And honestly, even the research is not black and white. Like it's not an absolute yes or no. So here's where I leave dairy. I think part of it depends on the cancer that we're talking about. Because I think certain cancers, there's actually been shown some benefit, like some decreased risk with dairy or calcium rich foods as well, versus others that could potentially increase risk. But for me, there's two pieces involved here. One is, do you actually tolerate dairy? Because most people don't, even if they think they do, and they love it and they eat it and they just deal with the like after effects of it, right? So part of it is getting back to the gut again. And do you actually digest and tolerate dairy well? If you don't, then it's not going to be a good food for you because it's creating irritation, right? It's creating inflammation. It's not going to be helpful for you, unfortunately. Um, if you do, if like genetically, you're fine and your ancestors have eaten dairy and it's really not a problem for you digestively, then it's the quality of the dairy because it's not going to be the same, right? Like if it's like commercial dairy from commercial cows versus grass-fed organic, I mean, those have different profiles. They have different inflammatory factors. They're just not the same food. So that's kind of the simple answer is, do you tolerate it? Is it high quality? And then we have to look more specifically at your cancer. Could it be a potential risk for your cancer or maybe not so much?
That's a great answer. So when we were in treatment and out of treatment, one of the biggest side effects is fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and are there any foods or even practices that you can either incorporate daily or just that can help you with fatigue? Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything that women can look at about how do I get over this fatigue? How do I start building back
Yeah.
my resilience and my energy?
Yeah.
That they may not ever be the same, but you want to be working towards feeling good about your body again and loving your
Oh,
body
for sure.
because
100%.
you're
There,
betrayed with cancer, right? Like,
yeah. Of course, thankfully there's a lot of things we can do to support fatigue. And when I say that, I mean like a lot of different angles, right? So of course, food is gonna promote energy. So if we're eating in a way that fuels energy, again, like are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough calories in general? Like sometimes you might be eating really good foods, but because you're not very hungry or you don't have a good appetite, you're just not eating enough. And so you don't have enough like energy, right? You don't have enough calories coming in. Sometimes it's calories, sometimes it's protein, sometimes it's nutrients. Maybe there's a mineral deficiency. We need minerals, we need B vitamins. Like all these things help us actually make ATP in our cells, right? Make energy. So part of it's our food, part of it is our hydration. Actually, when we're dehydrated, when we're tired, and of course, moving through cancer treatment, your hydration needs are higher. And even in those first few months after, when you're detoxing, right, you're really flushing things out of your system, you're going to need more hydration than normal. So it could be that. It could be sleep. I mean, of course, like how many people get interrupted sleep when they're moving through treatment? That's a really common side effect, right? So if we're having sleep deprivation or we're just not getting really deep restorative sleep, there's going to be fatigue. So bringing in strategies to enhance sleep is going to be helpful. I love getting back to what your organization does too, is that we can actually get energy from the earth. We can do that, and whether that's getting into a forest and like really soaking it up, or even just getting outside on your grass and connecting your feet or your hands to the earth, right? To earthing, that is going to give you energy. I can't tell you how many of my clients have felt like you just spend 10 minutes, right? Feet touching the earth and you get an energy boost. So sometimes sometimes it's letting nature help you. Like when you're just kind of like, I can't do any more things.
Yeah.
Then you just go lay on the grass. You know what I mean? You're just like, please give me energy, earth. Like I need a boost.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say too is sometimes it's a mental fatigue, particularly once you've made it through the other side of treatment. You're exhausted mentally as well as physically. And so the mental fatigue is, what can we do to boost your mood again? What can we do that's fun, that brings you joy, that makes you laugh? Like, who are your people that give you energy? Right. So then it's like kind of surrounding yourself with those people.
Because it's all connected,
Of
it all
course.
is. You can have the
Yeah.
best diet and be doing everything the way you should be doing it and still not feel, fulfilled, or still
Mm-hmm.
not be sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask about vitamins, because
Okay. Mm-hmm.
there is so much talk, and are they good for you? Do they just flush out? Should you be taking them? What I mean, what's your thought on vitamins, and their role in health as well?
Yeah. And are you referring to just like specific vitamins or supplements in general?
Supplements, the pills,
All of it.
counters lined with, I'm on all
Yeah.
supplements and pills and
Yeah. All the remedies. I
all the
know.
remedies. I have
I
it all.
know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I do think supplements can play a role. I definitely think they can make up for deficiency. You know what I mean? And they can also really be a bridge when you're struggling. So like I, of course, to me, when I think about like the foundation of what's important, or the pyramid rather of what's important, the foundation is still like how you're nourishing yourself, right? Like what is your food? What is your sleep? Are you getting out in nature? Like that kind of stuff is more important than the pills that you take. So first we start there. But then there are times when vitamins and supplements could help. They could enhance what you're doing. Maybe a good example is, I would say, like almost all of my clients or the people that I work with are deficient in vitamin D, as an example, right? And we know that vitamin D is very important in cancer prevention and recovery. So that might be one that we supplement, because it's just really hard to get enough, particularly if you're living in, right, Connecticut, or like in places where like it's just hard to get enough sun to make vitamin D. That's one example. Or like we know omega-3s are really important, but maybe somebody's just like not eating fish. And so we can bring in some plant-based sources, but perhaps a supplement is going to help us reach our goals quicker. Or you're having a lot of gut issues, and we know we need to bring in some gut support. So we might bring in some probiotics or some of those herbs I was telling you to kind of heal the lining of the gut, right? Depending on what your labs are doing, we might add in certain supplements to help. So I'm definitely not like, supplements are certainly one of my tools. Like we use them to help, they serve a purpose, but they're never going to be as helpful as like what the foundation is. Do you know what I mean? They sort of work on what's there, and they can make up some differences, but I've yet to see where like the supplement regimen outweighs the rest of what a person is doing.
Integrating that in. So,
Yeah.
so if a woman or anyone is thinking, okay, where do I be? I need some help. I need to bring in some help. I can't figure all of this out. There's too much information. I'm hearing, everyone loves to say, oh, do this, take that. I did this, I did that. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone is thinking, okay, I need to get some help, and they turn to someone like yourself, where do you start? What does that process look like? Like
Yeah.
how do you work with women, with people on just,
Yeah.
identifying what's happening and like putting that plan together? How do we think
Hmm.
about
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of places you could start for starters, And I think like I spoke to earlier, it also sort of depends on what you're coming to the table with, like what is already an easy part of your routine versus things that are not or are harder. And that will 100% look different for everybody, right? So we start with where you are, and then I really break it down into three kind of areas. So to me, like in what my experience working with people, the first area that is maybe not the most intuitive from a dietitian, but what I've learned is more important than even the food that you're eating is your nervous system and your stress and your emotional wellness. Because again, we could give you the checklist and you're doing all the things, right? But if you're just like nervous system is on constant fight or flight, right? You're like struggling with anxiety, depression, worry, all the things. Um, it's really going to limit what all those other things can do. It's going to hit a wall, right? So that's probably the best place to start, whether you work with someone or not, is to be part of an organization like this, right? And to like do things that are going to calm and ground your nervous system, that are going to help boost your mood, right? Ease the anxiety, because from that place, everything else is going to be easier to do. Right? If I give you a list, like here's your meal plan, here's all the vitamins that I want you to do, right? Here's the thing, but you're just like in constant stressed, freak out, fight or flight mode, like it's just not going to do very much. It took me a long time to figure that out. I mean, it seems obvious, but that like I wasn't taught that in dietitian school, right?
Do you think that's like, what do you see as like misconceptions about nutrition and cancer recovery? Like, are there some in your world, some big, flashing lights of like, oh, that's a really big misconception in food or in lifestyle?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the biggest misconception would just be that it has to look one certain way. I really don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of different ways we can support healing.
Yeah.
There are some overarching principles, and that's sort of where I like to focus is that what are the things that we know? Like, I'll give you an example. Regardless of what dietary pattern you choose to follow. So let's say you're an omnivore, maybe you're vegan, maybe you're vegetarian, maybe you're pescatarian, maybe you're paleo, like regardless of what dietary pattern, even keto, regardless of the pattern, okay, we can work with all of those. Some are going to be better for different people. That's something to know. Like keto, as an example, it could be really good for one person and horrible for somebody else. So it's like they don't necessarily work the same for everybody. But regardless of where you feel compelled to be, my approach is like, what do we need to bring in to help your body heal and recover, regardless? So maybe it's just even having a lot of really solid anti-cancer plants in your diet. So regardless of if you're eating meat or not, or you're eating dairy or not, are you eating enough cruciferous veggies? Are you eating broccoli and cauliflower and kale and cabbage and this whole family? Are you eating leafy greens, right? Are you eating spices? Are you drinking green tea? Like there's things we can bring in, right? That we can start with that is going to have a stronger impact than like what I see, at least on social media, this like constant debate between like you need to be keto or you need to be vegan. And they're so like passionate about it. You know what I mean? Like it really make you feel like you're wrong if you don't do that. And I think that is the biggest misconception because to me, I've seen no evidence that shows you have to do it one certain way. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of ways that will work.
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to like touch base on two things. One, like how do you know, like when you had mentioned like, keto might be really not
Mm,
great for someone. Like what, because they're
yeah.
very blanketed, right? You don't
Oh,
really
yeah.
know that. You just think, oh, that's the new thing, or I should be this. So what does that kind of mean where it might be okay for someone, but maybe not for me? How would I know that wouldn't be like that would be
Yeah.
horrible for me? Like what are your
Right.
Any
right.
indicators on that?
Well, I mean, there's indicators I use, and then there's indicators that just like maybe the general public would use. Because, like, for example, one of the things that I do with everybody I work with one-on-one is we run DNA testing. And I do that not to look for like cancer markers. I do that to look for what kind of diet is going to work best for you. How do your detox pathways function? How do you anti-inflame or methylate or antioxidate? Like, I want to know more about your systems of cancer prevention. And if there are some potential deficiencies, then we can be way more targeted in your long-term plan. So when I run DNA, I can see if someone's not going to do well with keto. Like they have a certain genetic profile where they actually don't metabolize fat very well. And keto is 70% fat. So that's not going to be a great diet for you. And then I have other people who don't actually metabolize carbs super well. So for them, a vegan diet is probably not going to be really great because it's like mostly carb, right? So that would be my way as a practitioner to know. But as a person, it's just without running DNA, I think it comes down to you being able to listen to your body because the truth is your body knows what's
Yeah,
good for it.
yeah,
I can use testing to help you figure out what's good for your body, but your body already knows if you know how to listen to it. And so you could test something, right? You could try keto for a week and really like go all in. And then you listen
mhm,
to your body. Like, what is your intuition telling you? Does this feel good? Like, I feel really good on this diet. Then you keep going. Yeah.
yeah,
If your intuition's like, I don't know, like this doesn't feel great, then you listen to that. So part of what I do, which again doesn't feel like super intuitive from a dietitian, but it's helping you get more in touch with your intuition. Because
mhm,
the more we can listen, the more we can hear these cues from our body, you already have all the answers.
yeah.
It's true.
With so many things, but there's so much noise. There's so much noise.
Yeah, we get distracted.
A
It's
lot of noise.
true.
Yeah. So we have two questions, and one is
Okay.
balancing fish with the contaminants in seafood, but and it also goes further than that because there's hormones in beef, there's hormones in like there's things that you hear and see. Like how do you balance
Mhm.
and that's how do you balance all of that? How do you know that your fish isn't contaminated, or if all fish is like what do you say to that, or to meat products as well that might
Mhm.
not be, we don't know where everything's coming from, we don't know
It's
necessarily.
true.
um
No, it's true. It's hard to know for sure. I mean, we work with what we do know. And I would say what you actually have resources for, because not everybody has resources for the same things. But if you do have access, we'll just use, animal food as an example. Like if you do have access to high quality, grass-fed, regenerative, organic sources, you can feel more confident in eating those foods, right? If that's an option for you. Same for fish. I mean, you can dive into that, and there are some great resources available, at least in the States, around like what are kind of safer fish to be choosing from that are less, less contaminated. So part of it is that. Part of it is, sort of being aware of where your things are coming from and what you have access to. But the other part is also sometimes we have to weigh the pros and cons. So I'll use fish as an example because it's true, like many fish are contaminated, unfortunately. But we also know that fish is going to be a good source of omega-3s. And if you need omega-3s, which most of us do, and most of us need them ideally in an animal-based source just because it's already in its active form. It doesn't have to convert in the body. Then how do we balance that? Well, here's what's really cool to know, and this is even true for meats and stuff too, is that if you're combining that food with a lot of colorful plants, the polyphenols in those plants can antioxidate whatever oxidants you might be exposed to in that food. And some of them can even help you bind and chelate out the toxin that might be in there, like mercury, for example. So part of it is just without needing to know the nitty gritty, it's just, are we eating it in combination with foods that we know can help protect us, like colorful plants, as an example? right? A really good one to know too is that with fish, with heavy metals, not that you're now you're gonna like all go out and buy a bunch of cilantro, but cilantro is a really great heavy metal chelator. So if we're eating cilantro in our diet, we're making dressings or we're making marinades with that, then if there are some heavy metals, it will help bind and get them out of our body. So, we can only do so much. And sometimes we have to weigh the pros and cons of like what nutrients do we need and what do we have access to. But that would be the way I manage it for myself, is just trying to eat a balanced diet and making sure I'm getting a lot of those plants.
Oh, that's a great, okay. What about your perspective from Jacqueline on alcohol?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, alcohol is another one of those, like, it's like the sugar.
Yeah.
It's like it unfortunately is a carcinogen. And it's like that's only becoming clearer and clearer, like in the data, right? So it can be a problem for many people. That said, I'm always about like, is there a workaround on occasion? You know what I mean? Like it's my birthday and I
Right.
really want,
Right.
or it's Christmas or whatever. And of course there is. Of course there is, right? It's not like your liver can't handle some alcohol. It's really about the total toxic burden that you're exposed to. So we work with what we can control, right? We don't overdo alcohol. We try to reduce our exposures in other ways. We support the liver so it can clear alcohol when we have it, and we enjoy it on occasion, right? It's really kind of about how we're approaching it as a lifestyle.
Balance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, you had mentioned, I mean, we all know that staying hydrated in active treatment, post, just in general. But what
Mm,
if you just can't stomach water?
yeah. Which happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
We had a patient who was she just couldn't, it actually, she had so much nausea that anything water, it didn't stay in her body. Um,
Yeah.
are there alternatives if,
Hmm.
gosh, I can't drink a gallon of water? It's just,
Yeah.
are there
Yeah.
items that you
There
can
are
choose?
100%. So anything that's decaffeinated will count towards your hydration. So it doesn't have to be just plain water. You can mix it up with different things. You can do herbal tea, you can do soups or broths, right? You can do coconut water. You could add electrolytes to your water. Sometimes that makes it more palatable, or even just like diluting some juice in it to give it like some flavor can make it better. For some people, sparkling water is a little more tolerated than just plain. You can play around with it, right? You can use, again, if you tolerate dairy, milk is hydrating. You could do that, or you could do a plant-based milk. I mean, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of options. So that's usually what I encourage the people that I work with to do, is to like think about, just like we might think about a food plan, like how are we going to get in enough protein, for example. We also think about how are we going to get in enough fluids, and how could we mix it up with different kinds of fluids so that it's more tolerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, gosh, this goes by so quick. Couple,
You can have me back.
yeah.
We can do a part two.
Um, so how, and this is the integrative part of like, if you're living with cancer, and
Mm,
whether you're in or out of treatment, you're always concerned of recurrence. That is
yeah.
always in the back of your mind when you're
Yeah.
having your scans. But are there mind shifts? Are there things that we can do that help us feel empowered in this healing journey,
Mm,
um, so that those voices and that worry sort of maybe recede? It's like replacing one with the other, right? Those kind of strategies.
mhm.
Like, what can we do with our nutrition, and what can we do in our like simple things in our daily life that help that
Yeah.
stress, that help, whether it's through nutrition, what can I grab if I'm just on the go and I need a something and I don't want to grab the chips, or worse, not have anything and then wait to the end of the day? And then what, like, little things maybe just can we do for ourselves to help manage this
Yeah.
stress that you live with when
Yeah.
cancer?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And like we said, even in the very beginning, there is a lot you can do. Like there's a lot in your control, which is in itself empowering, you know. I think where it can sometimes be more stressful, and maybe some of you on this call will relate to that, is if you feel like you were already doing all the things right and then you still got cancer. I think sometimes that is harder because you're like, what else do I do? What
Yeah.
else am I, right? Like, what was wrong? Not that
Yes.
anything was wrong, but that's
Right.
like where your brain goes. So yes, and those are a lot of the people I see, right? Like I say, most of the people that come to me are like, I was already doing all the things. So like, what else am I supposed to do? So I'm going to take it back actually to kind of something we talked about before, is that one of the best ways to shift your mindset is to get like quiet and to get more comfortable in your body again. So, grounding and calming your body every day, getting outside, touching the grass, getting in the forest, getting in nature, having these moments over the course of your day where you're returning back to a parasympathetic place, right? Like that calm place where you can just like listen instead of feeling like you're fleeing everything or fighting everything. So, first, like if you're not coming back to that place of calm, it's going to be hard to know what to do. Like you're never going to feel quite empowered because you're always going to feel like you're running from the tiger, right? So that would be first. It's just like, can we do that every day, multiple times over the day? A breath here, some essential oil there, like
Yeah.
whatever you need to calm down. Then it's about like really tuning into your body. What is the next best step for you? Like, what is the low hanging fruit? What are you the most excited to do? Right? Maybe it's adding in a smoothie a day where you just like check off 10 of those anti-cancer foods in a smoothie and you feel so empowered that like I just got all of those things in my body today, right? I mean, it's just one example, but it's like I want you to, I think what's most important is that you're coming from a place of calm and that you're really tapping into your body around what is the next best thing for me to do. That is where you're going to get a lot of the answers. So when I think about like recurrence, it goes back to my dad's story. When I think about recurrence prevention, we have to get back to like the why. And if you were doing a lot of things really well, then it's like really needing to tap into your intuition around why, what was off, what was amiss, was it, and it's usually somewhere around emotional stuff, right? Emotional conflict, stress, trauma. I mean, at least with most people I work with, and you're shaking your head. So, yeah. And sometimes that's hard. I'm not saying that's like easy stuff to address, but like that's like where we need to ask our body what was going on emotionally for me. It could be in my environment. What's happening in my environment? What am I being exposed to, including stress? Sometimes I
Yeah.
have people make major life changes as they go through this journey because they realize how many things were toxic for them that they hadn't like thought about before, right? So it's not always like, are you eating enough apples? It might be, but it's usually not. It's usually not that.
Yeah. It's everything. There's two questions in the chat.
Yes.
They're very specific.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to take them
Let's see.
offline, if you want to answer. It's Wendy and Lisa.
Okay. So a question about parasites and
Mhm.
then a question about cachexia. Yeah, complete. Yeah. Um, It might be easier for us to chat a little bit more offline. I would say that so something to consider because it's what might be more relevant for like everybody to
Yep.
chat about,
Yep.
particularly around the question with parasites, is like when we think about risk factors and potential root causes. So I like to in case this is helpful for you, I like to think about it in terms of 7 different systems. And so when I'm like helping people like dive deeper and assess and like start thinking through what were their potential risks, we go through these systems. And one of those systems is your gut microbiome. And like another system is the immune system and like chronic infections, right? So, like my dad's example with parasites, we didn't know he was dealing with that. And he had chronic Epstein-Barr, like he had an infectious overload in his body that we didn't realize, right? So it's possible that can be a burden for some people and they may not know it. I also look at We look at emotional wellness and stress, right? Like that's a system on its own, nervous system. We look at hormones, hormonal balance, or too much hormones in the body, particularly if you have a hormone sensitive cancer. Like we look at that. We look at detoxification. Yeah, so toxic burden, like where are all my exposures? Like, am I clearing things well? Do I have overload in my body? We look at blood sugar balance and insulin because that is a big piece around inflammation and immunity in the body. That's six. Which one have I forgotten? Oh, and then of course, nutrition, like nutrient deficiencies. Like, are we eating, enough of the good stuff to make sure we're not deficient in some basic nutrients that could be creating DNA problems, right, in our bodies. So you could take it in these systems and then you sort of qualify, like, where am I maybe? And actually, I don't know how easy it would be for you, Kathleen. I'm assuming you have everybody's emails, but I'm happy to send over a few resources too. Like, for example, for this question, I have a little cancer risk questionnaire you can take to kind of help you assess each of these systems for yourself.
Oh, that would be
Yeah, so
that.
I'll send you a few of those things to follow up.
Okay. And what I will do is I will give everyone, if they don't have that, your email as well, which is on Ground and Root
Yeah,
on your
yep,
website. And
yep.
it's just so much beautiful information, and just it's palatable because there's so much information out there.
Yeah, good.
Just in closing, in our last few minutes, and thank you so much for being here. Are there any new initiatives or things that you're working on,
Mm.
or what can we see that's going on in your world at Ground and Root?
Yeah, there's always new stuff. I love creating new things. Yeah. So I'll just quickly say for what we
Yeah.
were and what might be a good place for you to start if any of you are interested in just connecting and like learning more is I do have a free community called the Tribe, and it's a great place to start, and you get free resources, and we have a private Facebook group, and you can connect with other people, and that might be like a really fun place to just begin in my world. Of course the website too, but so that is already happening. And then I also have the Healing Collective, which is our group coaching membership. And then we also offer private coaching. So that's kind of what I already have, plus the cookbook. But what we're working on now, and hopefully it'll be ready in the next month or so. So if you're on the Tribe, you'll know as soon as it's ready. Is I've been working on putting together what I'm going to call the Ultimate Cancer Toolkit. And it's going to be a set of 3 self-paced programs to kind of help you implement some of the most important things up front. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're still in treatment, there's going to be a treatment support program. Like, these are the most important things to start with. And then you can go from there, right? But just like, what are the things to start with? That is almost done. I'm really excited about that one. We're going to have one focus on treatment, support, and recovery. We're going to have one focus on prevention. So when we're like focusing on recurrence prevention, and then one just around nutrition, and like enhancing your diet. So that's happening. I'm going to start a podcast this year, which I'm really excited about. I'll keep you posted on that. So hopefully soon as well, we'll have a new podcast in the world. We've also been working on, again, knowing that nervous system support is so important. We've started a new meditation library inside the collective where we have just like little audios, right? That you can like plug into your ear and just do like a daily audio to balance and reset your nervous system, to come in deeper alignment with your intuition, all the things that we talked about today. I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, so lots of things coming out.
Well, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you
Oh,
for
my
this
pleasure.
hour. I will connect everybody. Ground
Perfect.
Root is your organization. And
Yep,
just thank you for sharing it's a big topic. It's hard to talk
I
about
know.
everything in 1 hour, but I think, I just have
Yeah.
such respect for what you do. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And for you as well. I love what you're doing with Friends of the Forest. This is
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank
Yeah.
you to all our guests, all our women. And I hope that um, you know, we have resilience in our soul. We just have to find those reserves. So
Yeah.
everybody just, a beautiful rest of the day, and just on this journey, and reach out for support when you need it. 'Cause we all have to come together.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So
We do. We heal in community, we really need our fellow women supporting us.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
so welcome.
All right.
You're so welcome.
Nicole.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.